Do you want to play pickup sticks? Okay, you know the rules of the game, right? Exactly. Okay, I'll go first. Okay, now you. Sorry, what? Oh, this is my friend Ashley. People can't always see her. Maybe squint? No? Okay, well, maybe just imagine. Do you feel like coloring?
Sure, I'd love to color. I love color.
Cool. Let me get out the crayons and such.
What color do you want to use?
I've been feeling orange today. What about you?
Kind of clear.
You want a clear
those,
crayon?
like, markers. Yeah, like, those drawing things that you like use the invisible marker over and then it just like reveals all the color underneath it.
Yes. Did you?
Do you know
Okay.
what I'm talking about? There's like these
yes.
books.
Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the vibe for me today.
Okay, perfect. I'll give you a white crayon for your white paper. I feel like that.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's
It's actually a
white on
pastel, so it'll like you'll get the texture.
Cute.
Yeah. Cool.
I love that.
Did you have as a kid, or like do you know about these like it was like a pink like film of plastic that you could like write on, and then if you lifted up the plastic it would disappear.
Oh, I
Does
do
that
remember that. It was kind of like hot pink.
Yeah, exactly.
But I remember more like the Etch-a-Sketch.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was like an Etch-a-Sketch, but like just drawing. But yeah, Etch-a-Sketch actually. I was gonna say Etch-a-Sketch was cool, but I think I hated it because it was difficult. Like when you're a kid, it's like difficult to maneuver. I
Totally.
feel.
I was actually home recently,
Yeah.
visiting my family in the prairies during the holidays, and I have a little nephew now, and he's like 2.5. And he had an Etch-a-Sketch, and I was just having like such a good time playing on it.
Yeah.
And it's all about just like being intuitive is what I felt this time around, where it was just like this turning of like knobs and dials and not being like super attached to like how it actually looks. Like there's something about like the tablet ness of like the Etch-a-Sketch, or even like the Tamagotchi that just like almost just like prepped us for like the total...
that was so high tech.
It was. I remember when I was a kid, Tamagotchis were super high tech, and then you look at them now and you're just like lol. But I love it. It's like a flip phone, but
yeah,
not.
Oh my gosh. I used to play with, my mom is like a notorious phone breaker, and so I had this one flip phone of hers that had somehow broken, and I used to like make calls on it, and it had a couple really nice fuzzy stickers on it as well, I remember.
Would you make real phone calls on it?
No, like, in fact, I never made phone calls.
Or would you talk to your imaginary friends?
Exactly. Well, it was always like kids from class. But it's funny because, like, I actually don't think I can remember a time I ever made a call. I was always receiving calls. um,
Right.
just like a business bitch.
I mean, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
It's like the world coming in as opposed to you going out
Yeah,
into it.
And I think, like, because I, like, obviously had not had a phone at that point, that's probably how I understood the telephone, too. Like, that it was more about incoming information than outgoing,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah, because the phone call comes. Yeah, that would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if that's the way telephones worked?
If they, yeah,
You only
you could only.
receive.
That's interesting.
Like when you were a kid, did you have imaginary friends? And like, did they talk to you back?
Yeah, I didn't.
You didn't have any.
No. What about you?
I don't really remember having like specific imaginary friends, but I remember having like during playtime, like whatever that is supposed to mean. I would like imagine a lot of things in my head, and like things like I would like animate them with like voices and
Definitely. Yeah.
which is interesting.
Yeah. One thing I did do that I remember very specifically was I didn't name my stuffed animals because I felt that if I did, they would be like stuck as one persona. So like they always got different names every time I would play with them, but like they didn't have like a name. And that was something I felt really like one time my grandpa tried to name a doll of mine and I got really angry with him.
Right. You're like
yeah.
you're limiting this creature.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. Like we do limit when we assign things like names or words or anything, you know, and we kind of like it's interesting because I do believe that like everyone and like objects for that matter in a way like are multidimensional and like I don't know, when, you know, as someone who's really interested in like words and language, I still feel like frustrated that like when we assign like a word or a name or something, like we intrinsically take away something from whatever it is that we're naming, or like reduce it in a way.
Yeah. I don't know. Sorry, do you want to say more?
I think that's I think that might be the end of that train of thought there.
I was just worried that I cut you off.
No, it's all good.
Okay.
You didn't cut me off.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I feel complicatedly about that because I guess like I feel like naming something can also has the capacity to like once you have a concept, you can scaffold off of the concept. So I feel like there's also something that makes it like tactile or tangible, and then you can like move outward from the thing that you've named. I don't think
that's true.
But I think when I say that, I mean like naming something provisionally, because I would agree with you that it can be like if you're gonna be rigid about what something is called, like that's a mistake. But like I think sometimes you have to like there's this word that like psychologists often use, which is operationalize, like to operationalize whatever term you're talking about, which is like you're giving it like a definition for the purposes of like a specific instance or experiment, but that doesn't mean that's like what it is exactly.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. But I mean I think both are
like what's
kind of true almost, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like there is naming things isn't only like reductionalist, but it can also like open up entire like worlds too. Like naming something can also be like a form of like creating this like doorway that you enter, and then it's just, you know, we're talking kind of abstract, but like, you know, we could think of a specific word that does that. Even like the word play, you know. Like, what do you think when you think about play?
Okay, I guess like play to me is just like unproductive exploration that like doesn't ask anything of you. Like there's no like valence to it where you can succeed or fail at play. It's just like purely, it's supposed to be fun, and there's like I guess I like, I don't know, thinking that there are some things that like you do because they are fun and for no other reason, and like just because it feels good. Yeah.
Right.
What about you?
Yeah, and it's totally like an anti-capitalistic thing to do, to be like, yeah, like I'm gonna do something unproductive and I'm gonna enjoy it. Like that, there's something revolutionary to that. I think I very much agree with you. I think you did a really nice job of defining it. Play is just like, it's a place to explore. It's a place to like make mistakes without being like connected to the idea of it being a mistake. And same with like to have success in something, and it's just, it's a way that like as children we learn like so much through play. We learn like, I think everything. Like I think of like all the meaningful things that I've learned in my life, and like I can say confidently that I feel like a lot of it has just come to like my devotion to play, and like all the different manifestations that has taken over the years.
What does that look like for you? That your state
like
of play
these days, or my state of, well, I think I've done lots of like my playing in like my mind with like ideas and with I don't know, like visions, like vision questing. I'm not sure if that's a good word to use, but like I do lots of like
what's
play in
vision
my
questing?
head in terms of like
I don't know what that is.
I don't know. I feel like I kind of like involuntarily like started doing this thing like in my mid-20s, where like my form of play was like creating like like imagining future versions of myself and like of my life.
Right.
And yeah, and then that kind of like feeds into like manifestation, like how these things, like if you do feed them enough energy, eventually like they do come to fruition or very close to fruition. I'm really fascinated with that, but also it's nice to get physical. Like lately my favorite form of play is actually, I've gotten really into making cocktails.
Oh, cool.
And like, yeah, just like kind of getting in there and playing with like different flavors and different ways of mixing. And I've just been having a lot of like fun playing with like, I guess, liquids, but yummy cocktail liquids.
Yeah.
That's been really fun for me.
Do you have a like certain flavor that you're drawn to right now, or a combination?
I mean, I love tequila and mezcal.
Okay.
So I feel like I've been playing a
Smoky.
lot with like variations of that. Yeah, smoky, and then I also love like passion fruit. And even like a little bit of creaminess, like adding like a little bit of oat milk. I don't know.
Really?
And like spice, like some jalapeno spice. Like, I don't know, just getting kind of wild. And yeah, that's kind of been like my main form of play the past couple months. But I feel like there's going to be something new that comes, but I don't know what that's going to be yet.
Oh, cool. How do you, like, how are you looking for it? Or are you just, do you feel like that'll just appear at some point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it just like, it starts as inspiration and like curiosity about something. And then it stems from that. Like, I guess right now I'm interested in playing with sound more than I've ever been in my life. And getting my hands on like a bunch of like fun vocal processing systems, and then just like feeding my poetry through it, and like playing and manipulating with the sounds that come out. That's currently like what I think I want to do. But sometimes it's like, yeah, like the tools, like there's a lot of learning involved with that, you know? So sometimes it's like it's interesting because sometimes play does involve a lot of like, in order for me to get to that place of play, I need to learn a lot and probably
Yeah.
like get a bunch of like equipment.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a barrier to entry to playing almost.
Yeah, there definitely can be when it comes to
Hmm.
some
With like
some
yeah,
realms for
needing to know
sure. Like
technical stuff. Yeah.
I guess there are, like I've never thought of it, but when you think about it, there are in a lots of ways, maybe not in regards to our imagination, but to like physical play, like throughout our lives there's always barriers to entry to like enter this sense of play
Hmm.
because there's like different levels of games for like each kid, and it kind of requires a certain like level of like mental capability or like
Yeah.
physical capability. And
Hmm.
yeah, I've just never thought of that before. It's interesting.
Mm. Yeah. I'm curious, you like this is also just a way of speaking, but you keep referring to play as a place. I'm curious, like,
Hmm.
if you could talk more about that, like if there's a place that, like, if you were to describe the
Hmm.
place, what it would look like.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I think it's like more so a state of mind.
Okay.
Um, but like I view states of mind as being like different places.
Hmm.
Just in the same way that like feelings are different places.
Hmm.
Like we're not in I guess an emotional space.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know like if I don't know if I've ever thought about like the architecture of what this space
Hmm.
looks like.
Or like, how would you
It could
furnish
be
it? Or
psychedelic, maybe.
yeah, cool.
Oh my gosh, yeah, like decorating my imagination.
Yeah,
Well, I think it would be like a psychedelic thing for me
cool.
because it just, in terms of like, fractals, how I'm not sure if you've ever seen like videos of like the Mandel, what's it called? The Mandelbrot fractal, something
No,
like
I don't.
that. The Mendel
I don't know
fractal.
what that is. Can you tell me what
It's
it is?
pretty much this like, yeah, it's like this visualization that
Hmm.
pretty much it's like a fractal, and then the more you zoom into a part of the fractal, it turns into like other fractals, and it's like this infinite world of like
Mm.
constant becoming, and it like never
Mm.
ends.
Like a
And I think
kaleidoscopic
that
kind of
like,
thing.
yeah, like one of those like infinity rooms
Okay.
where there's like no limit.
Hmm. Cool.
That's what I like to envision a state of like a place of play looking like.
I love that.
Lots of color,
Hmm.
definitely, all the color,
Hmm.
and like shapes that aren't fixed to one space. Like things are
Yeah.
constantly changing.
So do you feel like for you, you play the best when you're unbound? Or do you feel like you need, because I think I might be a person who's like
Hmm.
at sometimes needs to like impose creative constraints in order to be like to have
Mm-hmm.
something to like jump off
Right.
of.
Yeah,
Do you
I feel
Where are
like
you at?
restraint, like yeah, having restraint to a certain degree is important for me. I feel like when I'm given like all the leadway that I need to like be in a state of play, that like I don't know, sometimes I don't know, sometimes you just want to like enjoy, well, I think play is enjoying life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like to play, I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, it can probably be everything all the time at different points in time, too.
Yeah, I don't think I'm good at like scheduling things. Like I don't
Yeah.
think I'm like good at like, okay, I'm gonna do this like once a week, or
Mm-hmm.
I guess I think it would be healthy to create like more rituals around it, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
also not really a person that can like force things. So
Yeah.
if I'm not feeling playful, which is actually true like a lot of the time,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't like force myself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I meant it more in the sense, like, not so much about like discipline or rigor, but like when I say creative constraints, I feel like it's such a like um, icky. It has so much ickiness around it, but I meant it more just like a prompt or
Mm-hmm.
like you know what I mean? Like even the just the beginning of an idea as a creative constraint.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that like that's when like collaborating with others is really
Mm.
fun because I think that like I've had experiences in the past where I've been like creating with other people and like in some ways like their ideas like yeah, they like just open up whole new worlds
Mm-hmm.
in your mind that you wouldn't have had access to otherwise.
Totally.
Like
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's almost like um, there's something almost constraining, like in a productive way, about having to communicate thoughts to another person that you're collaborating with, too, right? Like
yeah.
even before the thing is
Yeah, back
made,
to
you
the
have to be able
communication
to
thing.
talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where like language comes in really handy
Yeah.
to get your ideas across or just
Mhm.
having like images and whatnot.
Mhm.
But it's fun to create together. Yeah, and then I love the idea of like instead of like us creating like a new version of the world through um I don't know, like an obligation to do something productive. Like, what if we were like creating the new world through our play
Yeah.
and through like our curiosity about the things around us and about each other too.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
That would
Yeah.
be I would love to live in that world.
Yeah. Yeah, I like what you said about kind of outward looking curiosity and like curiosity about other people, um, as
Right.
opposed to just because I feel like oftentimes when I think about curiosity, it's almost like a solitary endeavor where it's like, what can I learn um, for my
Mhm.
own like knowledge or whatever? But to look at to be curious about someone, that's like a real act of care.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
100%. I think that like we've just been like, or at least perhaps like I was raised, we've all been raised in this sort of like individualistic society that
Mm-hmm.
kind of tries to train our imagination, our sense of play, like out of us, like
Mm-hmm.
throughout like the course of our like educations or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that is, and
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that we got to reclaim like the joy of being alive and like the
Yeah.
excitement about who others are and like the world
Mm-hmm.
outside of ourselves because
Mm-hmm.
our inner worlds are so interesting. Like I love exploring my inner world and I could do it in
Mm-hmm.
solitary forever probably, but it doesn't feel meaningful. It doesn't feel meaningful for me in the same way that it feels meaningful when I share my work with other people or when I'm collaborating. Like there's just a certain intrinsic meaning to like working with one another and engaging with one another that I love. I definitely feel like I like being feeling isolated
Mm.
when I create like
Yeah.
deep work though. Like, I almost sometimes I just like I don't know, I feel like when I'm in a creativity spurt, like I just don't want to
Yeah.
like interact with the world around me, which is also an interesting thing. Like, yeah, like why that isolation? Why is that
Mm. Mm.
so fertile? And same with like writing. Like I feel like I'm better at writing about people when I feel like a sense of
Yeah.
like distance from them
Yeah.
and like a sense of loss. It's like almost like this empty space that I can like fill or something. When I feel too close to something, I definitely
Mm. Yeah.
can't like creatively explore it.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine a few months ago, and uh, they were talking about how um, they really loved when people told them specific nice things about themselves, and then we were wondering like why that felt like a rare
Mm-hmm.
occurrence, And my hypothesis was that, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to articulate specifically what bothers you about someone. But when you, like, love someone, you're like, oh, but it's everything or whatever. And maybe that's a like
Totally.
a proximity thing. Do you feel like that's related to?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think that's 100% related because I just write more and create more when I'm in a state of like, or what I perceive as being a state of lack.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wrote a lot during my heartbreak.
Yeah.
I write a lot when I miss people.
Yeah.
But I feel like when I'm in a good, if I'm in love, like, it's almost like I don't need to write about it because I can just live it and it just feels good. And then I feel like when I'm in more of like a negative state, it's almost like I use my work to like write myself like a new narrative. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I think I turn to art when I feel like something needs to change in my life.
Yeah, you need to do something about it. Or something.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to hit you with a list of words.
Okay.
And I want you to choose one and then tell me a memory from when you were a kid.
Okay.
So I have purple, grapefruit, earring, costume, hide and seek, and symmetry.
Oh my gosh. Well, one of my most vivid memories from when I was a kid was this. We had like a little backyard in this house I grew up in, and there was this big, beautiful lilac tree that bloomed purple blossoms every spring.
It's my favorite flower.
And it smelled so good. Yeah, I love lilacs too. And they're just so like, they just bloom so fast and disappear so fast. And like, there's something about like the lilacs and like the purpleness of them and the fragrance of them that really evokes like, yeah, like when I think about my childhood, I actually don't remember a whole lot. It's kind of weird. My whole memory is actually kind of bad. Like I don't really have like the greatest memory. And I don't, and I have like ideas as to like why that is, but like I think I dissociate a lot from reality. Yeah. You know, so I feel like I have like one foot in consciousness and like one foot in not.
Right. I mean, that's perfect. I think that a lot of my childhood memories are also like they're not really stories, they're just images. So I understand, like, I see your lilac bush.
Yeah, it's just, my memories are, I think I spent a lot of, like, time in my head. Like, I'm a really, like, I think a lot, you know, and I think that makes me feel like sometimes I'm not in the world. Like, I might think too much, even. Yeah. So maybe that takes me out of the world, but...
I feel that way, too.
I remember having this, like, really elaborate vision in my mind when I was a kid, that there was like this imaginary doorway that like went up this like set of stairs, and then like all these like dark creatures like lived up there, like little shadow creatures, and it was always just there. And I remember feeding this like idea so much in my head when I was a kid, like before I'd go to sleep. And I don't know, it's like little things like that that I have memories of.
Yeah. Did you ever do the thing in like a swimming pool where you would have your eyes closed underwater and just like convince yourself there was a shark in the water?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay.
Like, for real, like I thought that there was a shark like behind our bathtub.
Oh, interesting.
When I was a kid, like, because there were like, we had tiles and some of the tiles like had fallen off, and there was like this weird like bag over some of the tiles. And I remember just thinking that like that was the portal to the shark.
Oh, a portal to a shark. Whoa.
Yeah, and that it was just gonna like break through it. I don't know. I guess brains are so weird.
Brains are weird. I shared a room with my big brother as a kid, and he had this magic box, or like a box of for magic tricks or whatever on the top shelf of our closet. And at one point there was also like some kind of cloak over it. And I like remember very vividly like seeing it one night, and just it looked so much like a witch like slumped over, just like on the shelf. And
Oh my
I was like,
God.
I hate this. Yeah.
I'm terrified.
Yeah. Do you feel like
I hate this.
Do you feel like, okay, so I'm curious, like, because those are scary things that you imagined. Do you feel like your imagination was like a place that's like it made the world scarier, or maybe that was just how you, like, your one foot that was in the world, maybe like your imagination found scary things in the real world but good things in your own world? Or
Yeah, I think it's just like a reflection of like how in reality we have always both. You know, like we do live in a world of duality where there is like light and dark, like I don't, like good and bad, and like all of these like binaries. So like I think it makes sense that like the imagination would also have both.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever, I don't know, I guess like sometimes our we can get carried away in our thinking, and like for sure, but it seems like neutral to me. It seems like my imagination is both like a really good place and also can be a dark place as well.
Yeah.
I think you just get better at like knowing the difference when you get older. It's kind of like,
right.
I don't know. You kind of learn how to like explore that world in a way that is safe.
Okay, I have a question for you. If you could like imagine yourself a friend, how would that friend make you feel loved or safe?
Oh, like imagining like a friend and like what kind of like what would make me feel safe?
Yeah, I guess like
about it.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a question about what
like,
you feel like you need right now. Maybe you don't need an imaginary friend right now, but
no, I'm down for an imaginary friend. Pretty much someone who will take care of all of the shit in my life that I have to deal with that I don't want to deal with.
Right.
No, that's like not a real answer.
So you would imagine yourself a personal assistant?
Kind of.
Yeah. No, I mean, okay.
Does that count? No, that's not fair.
No,
I mean,
I
to be fair with you, I'm really lucky, and I do feel really lucky, and I feel like I have a lot of support in my life that feels like people listen to me, and that like people like, you know, like I think touch is a really big part of it, like giving people hugs. I like always feel so good when someone gives me a hug.
Yes.
And like, yeah, I don't know, but I also am just feeling like I'm on this like, I've been feeling really good on my own lately.
Yeah.
Almost like too good.
Yeah.
Not too good, but like, yeah, I don't know. It's been hard for me to like let other people into my world recently.
That's okay though.
And I think that like I'm also the kind of person that like is fascinated by how like I think I fixate more on like what I can be for other people as opposed to like I think that if you ask me the question like what kind of friend would you want to be, like I feel like I'd be able to like answer that a lot better than, but I have this habit of like fixating on other people before myself.
No,
so
of course.
Maybe that's just reflective of that.
Yeah. I mean, I have a whole like theory about how AFAB people, like people assigned female at birth or like so socialized as women, have a harder time both detecting and then also like articulating their own desire, because like we're like taught to be
we're never like
objectified or whatever, and like how to mediate objectification, and like etc. But then like not understanding like your own wants as something that are like worth
That's
acting upon. Yeah.
That's so it. And then also, yeah, and you're so right to say that, like, boundaries,
Yeah.
you know, like, are something that I didn't even really start thinking about until like a couple years ago when I turned 30.
Yeah.
And, you know, culturally we were kind of having this huge moment about boundaries and like, you know, I had this like huge realization, but I didn't know how to like cultivate boundaries for myself, and I didn't even know what my boundaries were.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's been like a huge learning and healing process for me the last couple of years, like being able to like know that I can choose what I let into my life.
Yeah.
I don't need to let everything in.
Yeah.
And I think that like I was kind of like taught and raised to just like let the world, you know, like you just deal with the world.
Yeah, or like,
you know, like
that,
you let it in, but
yeah, or that it's gonna come in anyway. So how do you deal with it now that it's here? You know?
Yeah, and then how do you make it feel comfortable?
Yeah.
You know, like that's not,
or like tolerate
that's kind of how
it.
I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so it. So I think it's just like been this huge learning journey about like, yeah, like what makes me feel safe, what makes me feel not safe. And like, you know, and that's one part, but then articulating it and communicating that is a whole other part. And there's a whole art to it that I'm still learning. And I think it might be like a lifelong journey.
Of course. Of course. That's the other thing about play too, right? Is that it's not well, as much as we were talking about it as maybe like a state of mind or like a destination, like what it looks like is forever, like those fractals are fractaling all the time, right? So it's
the fractals are fractaling.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, yeah, where you thought a boundary was, like there isn't. And life is full of surprises.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why it's fun to approach it with like fascination.
Yeah.
Because also the world is so bleak right now. You know, like if we're being really real, like there's so many hard things that like we're collectively trying to like digest right now.
Absolutely.
And it's like a true act for us to not stay fixated on the dark and to like, you know, I'm constantly trying to like, yeah, like be a light, you know, as much as I possibly can, and to like help other people find their lights. And like, yeah, like I'm really into this whole like, yeah, like we need to focus on the light.
How are you? Like
lite-brite. I gave my nephew a lite-brite for Christmas.
Lite-brites are the best.
I was really.
Do they still look the same?
And they had like the original. I think they just like re-released them as like their original like design.
Okay.
So they're just super like old school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
I loved that when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's so fun. Because I'm picturing that they could have like rebranded and been like, oh, it's a screen now or something. I don't know.
Super high tech. But yeah, no, lite-brite is forever just the box with the plastic.
Yeah.
Colors.
You can't. Why mess with a good thing? You know?
Oh. No, exactly.
Yeah.
And we need those like archaic forms of technology to get us out of this overwhelmingly technological world.
Yeah, and I mean,
like get off your phone and like play with lite-brite.
Yeah. They should hire you.
Or like get some slime, you know?
Yeah.
We have bodies.
Yeah. Totally.
I think it's easy to forget. It's easy to forget that, like, especially within technology, like we have bodies. We can get up and go do things instead of just sitting on our phones and scrolling.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think something like a tactile toy like that reminds you of your own physical being, and also about touch. Like I'm big on touch too. So what you said about like like friends, like platonic touch, like I'm completely on board with that.
That's so it. And then also just like back to like my fascination with cocktails recently, like that's all about taste. And then there's like sense, you know, and there's so many things that like technology can't give us. We don't abandon technology, but there's so much around us that is worthy of our noticing.
Yeah, I mean,
like our attention.
Yeah, I think the way that I've like reframed it is that like it's a tool, but that means that it's just one thing. It's not everything, you know. Like it's good for some things, but that doesn't mean that it's the only form of doing everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, I feel like you've already answered this, but like the final question that I would have for you is like, how would you like to imagine, like, what if you could like stretch your brain, how would you stretch it? Or
yeah, I feel like it's like this touchpad in a way, but my attention is a touchpad, and it's like 360 degrees around me, even more. It's like 720. Is that a thing? Like all the way around
just
me.
Very much all the way around.
And I can kind of just like pretty much just everywhere. And I just like envision these like my attention being able to like drop like little points of reference on this like infinite sphere, and like little like ripples of color come out, and then I do that all around, and then all the ripples come out and then start to touch and create this like 3-dimensional shape that like is very liquid and then like disappears. It's like this really like liminal zone where like your attention has currency, but there's like all the possibilities are there.
Yeah. Is that, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything specific, but like, are those points, are they forming a memory? Or what is that amorphous thing that's collecting?
Oh, like a, right.
You don't have to have an answer
in
either.
My head, I was in, right. Well, I was just like envisioning this like funny place where, yeah, like I guess like your attention does leave little memories, like it's almost like a memory foam in a way, where it's like you see its impact, and then it like moves, like it. It's like such a visual thing I'm seeing right now, but it's pretty much this like huge consciousness like playland with like everything's a touch screen. So for instance, when I was saying like all these different things are happening, there's like ripples of energy, and then something happens and they kind of like, I envisioned like 3 points of reference like emerging into like a fountain.
Right.
I don't know. I just saw a fountain.
Yeah. So, okay. So then things are like appearing also, like material things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. I don't know if that's, I guess there's no right or wrong.
Yeah, that's allowed.
That's when you, that's kind of where my brain went.
Yeah. I love that.
I think in energy a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that makes sense for me. Like I'm really sensitive to energy, and like I think about it a lot. So I see it around people and all this stuff. So I think it makes sense that that's where my mind would want to go and like play.
I'm curious if you see your own energy.
I think I feel my energy more than I see it.
Yeah.
And I think that's true of like how I sense other people's energy too. Like I can like feel when something is wrong with someone. Like I'm very like intuitive in this way.
Yeah.
But I will see colors sometimes, especially with like people I love and like in like ecstatic moments. And like I'll see like bright colors around people and stuff, which is always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of love that.
Yeah.
I think I was in denial about it for a long time though. Like I think that like I'm just kind of starting to come into this like, this like ability that I have that I think like most of us probably have. And it's kind of tied into like how we're raised a certain way in society, like shapes us a certain way and makes us feel a certain way about like witches or like, you know, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
but I'm trying to like deprogram myself into like realize and like what my gifts are, you know, and I think it is a gift to be able to interact with energy.
Yeah, and even being allowed to express yourself in that way. Like, I feel like my experience of the world is like highly textural, which like relates to energy as well, like not just like physical textures, but energetic textures. And when I was a kid, would talk about it very freely, and then I remember a friend of mine telling me that like it was the way I was speaking, I sounded dumb, and then I stopped, and so I'm like really learning to like talk about how things viscerally feel in a way that is like not leaning on like an idiomatic phrase just for the sake of like ease of communication or whatever, because that's not that's not actually how it feels. It's just like a mnemonic device for an experience.
Yeah, it's so true. I feel like it's so sad that like this happens to us when we're kids, because like it's not our fault, you know, that the world isn't necessarily a place that like embraces magic and like things beyond our seeing or like actual comprehension. But like I was a babysitter a few years ago, which I actually loved. I loved working with kids so much because
you're such a good babysitter.
Man, hanging out with them is like just so fun. Thanks. I loved hanging out with them. But one of the girls I babysat for was clearly like a gifted individual. Like there was something so magical about her, and she would have these like visions where like these characters and like colors would like fly around her, and she would kind of like bat them away.
Whoa.
And I remember like her parents were like really concerned about it, and they were like, if she ever does that, like just like snap her out of it and, you know, bring her back to reality. And then like I always really struggled with that, and like instead of, I would like ask her questions. I'd be like, what colors are they? And like, you know, like engage her as opposed to like make her feel shame for something that she was just like experiencing.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
That would be such a cool like new Babysitters Club book series where it's like,
oh my God,
mystical. Whoa.
True.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming over, Ashley. This was a really special conversation.
Aw, thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna go and cleanse my crystals.
Always important. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
But thanks for letting me visit you.
Yeah, thanks for coming over.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll miss you. I'll come visit again sometime soon.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, friends. Thanks for coming over. Ding! One word I like a lot is mimicry. M-I-M-I-C-R-Y. Mimicry. I like it because it's really delicate. I first learned it when I was learning about butterflies, so I always think of a butterfly wing. And also I like it because it says, Mimi, cry. Ding!